Hello and welcome to the fourth episode of Voices of Compassion podcast series brought to you by Abhyuday IIT Bombay. Today we have with us on board Mr. Mahesh Kale, who's a well-known Hindustani classical vocalist, so has been dedicatedly working towards preserving and promoting the Indian cultural heritage through Hindustani classical music. And he's been also working, he's been innovating ideas to enhance the involvement of the younger generation in this particular direction. So we're honored to have you on board, sir. Welcome. And
thank you so much.
Thank you so much for spending the time out and coming to the podcast.
Thank you.
So to begin with, I think we'd like to know about your musical journey. Like, how did you actually get into music, and particularly into Hindustani classical music? What got your attention?
Well, I actually grew up in a household that had music as a common element throughout different celebrations of life.
Okay.
So if we had a thread ceremony, there was music as the conclusion. If there was a shadi, there was music. Whatever we did, it had to conclude or have to have an informal but a very sincere, long musical session.
Right.
Also, in my family, my mother learned Indian classical music.
Okay.
And it was even more influential because she did her masters when we were growing up. I have an elder brother. So when both of us were growing up, she did her masters in music. And all of these things were kind of, through us, it were being seeded. And that's how I realized I don't remember a moment where music was not a part of my life.
Right.
So that's how it came about. My father has a very sharp acumen for Hindustani classical music. He has no formal training, but he used to, even if a sitar strummed its sympathetic strings, he would know what the rag is. So I grew up in a family that was in love with music and was surrounded by it since my birth.
So that's how you got into it. I mean, you had an upbringing with music.
Yes. Mahal tha.
Right. But how would you suggest somebody who's not has that kind of an upbringing, who does not have that much access to music, who's probably willing to get into classical music?
Start surrounding yourself with what you want to do. I mean, it's a simple thing, right? On two levels. One, there should be sincerity in intent and commitment to the process. If these two things happen, I think you will be okay. If you are immersed in an environment, like we are sitting on an IIT campus right now, it's all about education and motivation and solving problems. If you are in that environment, you'll automatically end up thinking along that line of thought. So just surround yourself with the music you want to pursue. And I'll tell you, I don't know about you, but I believe in rebirth. I don't think any passion is only for a lifetime. You can just think of trying to collect points for your next life. It doesn't matter how long you do it. It's always going to be less. As in, a million tunes cannot give you the happiness, but a single note can. And that's the pursuit that you should look at it as. Just surround yourself.
It's really interesting to see it that way. Right. So, but then again, I mean, the younger generation seems to have some kind of an aversion towards classical music these days, no matter how much you...
See, I think the aversion is because of the boogaboo that has been created about Hindustani music. I have very few young people that have not liked my concert. Because actually what I try to do is to demystify what they think about classical music.
Right.
I mean, traditionally it has been that, just like spirituality and yoga, at a point of time you started to do it when you were in an older age. And it was for kind of like your semi-retirement plan. But now you can see spirituality and yoga are both very mainstream in the age group that you are. So is Indian classical music. And then the way I conduct my concerts is to try and have a demystification goal. When I make it more palpable, easy for them to understand, more friendly, conversational, all of those things help. And I would like to believe it's in a better place than a decade ago.
All right. So, what suggestions do you have for like an aspiring classical musician who's still maybe in the training process to make things work or maybe to get better?
The end goal should be to be able to hold the music you want to sing, and then let the music take you wherever it should. If your inherent goal is extrinsic, then music is not the journey you are on. Music is the product you use to get to the destination, which is not music.
Right.
That might be dangerous. I mean, even if in engineering you want to make sure that there is a demand in market, but you want to make sure that the product itself is so potent and worthy that you can then package it and sell it outside. But if you only think about packaging, then that's not the best way to do it.
Right. So you need to get into a deeper level.
Yes.
And understand things.
Domain expertise.
How important has music been in your life? I mean,
I cannot imagine my life without music. Music to me is not something I do, it's something I live. It is a way of life. It is a forever companion. Wherever I go, my music goes with me. I don't know if there is very many relationships like that. I know books and fine arts and others are like that. You can carry them with you. But yeah, music is like my forever companion.
I read about you that you also hold a degree in electronics engineering.
Yes, that I
and you
do.
have an engineering background.
Yes.
So how did you balance music alongside that?
It
while
was
you
a
were pursuing
hard
engineering?
time, I must tell you. The first thing I can remember is I used to accompany my Guruji. There is this conference called Savai Gandharv Sangeet Mahotsav, which is one of the premier events. I used to read my EDC book in the green room because he used to conclude that festival. I would get on stage at 4:30, and right after he had finished, I would ride to my college to give my final exams. So it was hard, but again, when you fall in love, you make things happen. There's no rationale, there's no schedule. You just burn the candle of both on both the ends, and that's probably what happened with me. So looking back, it was hard. In the moment, it was just what I had to do.
Music has been a part of your life ever since you...
It has been a constant motivation.
Right. So you didn't have to extrinsically draw
No.
it. Right. So the next question is more about balancing between, maintaining the traditional essence of music, the classical music, and the innovation and experiments you try to do. So how do you make sure that there's a proper balance between it?
I think the balance comes from the intent, and I'll tell you why I say that. See, what is traditional right now was an experiment a few decades ago. If you look at, there was Sam Gayan, which was sung as a choral singing, and after that there came Prabandh Gayan, Jati Gayan, Prabandh Gayan, then there came Drupad, after Drupad came Khyal. So let's say when Drupad was being changed into Khyal, the musicians of that time wanted a little more free form to be able to express themselves. So they got into an art form that was called Khyal. At that time, Khyal was an experiment. Right now, it's a de facto standard. So the intent is to further the beauty and grace of the rag music and extend it to the next generation. If the intent is there, I think most of the times you don't.
So where do you see Hindustani classical music going in the future?
I see it going in two extreme ends. One, trying to go the authentic path, because India is one of the oldest countries in the world.
Right.
So to show the world what art form used to look like thousands of years ago, you would have to travel back. And to make it relevant and contextualized to the generation, it's also going to go into collaborative effort. And I love to do both of them.
Okay. That's interesting. Is there any favorite rag or any favorite composition that you can think of? One in particular?
No. I'm very impulsive. जब बारिश होती है तब मुझे अदरक वाली चाय या भजिया खाने जैसे लगता है. So no, I just go with the flow. See, there's a few reasons I like a rag, and they are polar opposites. I like a few rags because they are the most reliable best friends that they always show up and stand by me when I need them. But I also like a few rags that are very hard to conquer, and they are so evasive that I want to
Could you
make sure
just
that
name a few of them?
well, a few. My forever companions are Bhairav in the morning, Sarang in the afternoon, Multani in the late afternoon, Yaman in the evening, and the few evasives are Jai Jayavanti, Nand, and the list goes on.
Okay, so any suggestions for somebody who's still learning music to how to get to better themselves at ragas that you also find difficult? I mean, you said.
See, you have to be more than do. You have to observe. It's said that the ragas are a live form, and they appear to you as you spend time. It is just like a conversation. If you want to know a rag, then I would much rather ask questions to the rag and wait for the rag to answer. Otherwise, there's no dialogue.
Right.
So listen.
Once again, a deeper connection has to be there.
Absolutely.
Right. So, any musical inspirations do you have? I mean, growing up while you were still undergoing
Many musical. Yeah. First and foremost, of course, my Guruji Pandit Jitendra Abhisheki and my mother, Neenal Kare. But I have had a lot of influences. You couldn't escape Pandit Bhimsen Joshi's music, Ustad Amir Khan Sahib, Zakir Hussain, Ustad Zakir Hussain, Ravi Shankar ji, Kumar Gandhar, Kishori Thai, Halini Thai, and the list goes on. And not to forget the other influences that are not classical music. I love Elvis Presley, Michael Jackson. I love to listen to Bruno Mars and the Maroon 5s. And if you look at my phone, you'll not be able to tell it's a phone that belongs to a classical musician.
Okay. So now that brings us to the next question. I mean, while you're still listening to different genres and exploring, how do you make sure that you keep the essence of classical music intact while you're...
It's just like you're speaking in English right now, and you have to be mindful that the conversation is best conducted in this language. Or if you're serving food and the topic is to cook Chinese, you want to make sure that there's no bhajiya in that food. It comes very naturally to me. My thinking process is in Indian classical. So there's not going to be a confusion of whether I'm going to... Anything that actually comes into my Hindustani classical music experiments are by design. There's nothing that just creeps in. And I think many a times observing many other things will only help you fine-tuning and discovering yourself. That is what happens to me when I listen to Middle Eastern ensemble or listen to Western classical music or jazz or whatever else. I start saying, this is how my Hindustani music is unique. It is similar to the jazz in the form that it improvises and jumps back to its refrain, but it is also similar to the Gregorian chants where there is modes like we have thoughts, but it has this improvisational capability which is streamlined in its structure that I don't find anywhere else.
And as I said, beauty lies in the multitude. So I mean, music also you can find it just one.
No, see, again, just like science.
Yeah.
There is nothing called complete science, right? We are still chasing problems that are not solved. In music, we are still chasing the beauty that has not been discovered.
So, I mean, in your journey, you must have faced a lot of challenges as an artist. What is that one challenge which you think was, the most, that had a very huge impact, and how did you overcome it?
Well, I'm still facing that challenge. My challenge is to make every living being listen to Indian classical. That's a tall order. I'm grateful that I have a technological bent, so I try to use technology as much as I can. For example, I was in Jaipur 3 days ago, and I actually came upon a Krishna Meera temple. I haven't seen many of those. The tour guide said it's the only one. And then I felt like singing a Meera bhajan, so I actually recorded a Meera bhajan and I uploaded it. And it has been watched by 600,000 people already. So there you go. I was able to reach geographies. So these are different things that I look for, and it's a constant motivation. I know it's a very tall aim, but I'm grateful for the tall aim because then I'm never going to be complacent.
Right.
It's a great challenge to solve. I would love for people to know that they don't like classical music more than for people to not know classical music.
Right.
So that's my person.
That's really nice to know. So, do you see any connection between classical music or music in general and the greater good of the society? Like maybe.
Absolutely. Absolutely. See, the whole premise for the existence of arts is one, self-expression, and two, the joy you get because you're allowed to express yourself.
Right.
When you do, you're happy. When you're happy, usually you're kind. When you're kind, it's a good thing for the society. You'll not do wrong by others.
Right.
So there is a very strong correlation between music and wellness, and that's actually something that I am trying to pursue with research.
Right.
How to make sure that the ragas are kind of coded into ways to, deploy in your headsets for a focused wellness session.
Okay.
So if you're stressed, listen to this rag. If you're anxious, listen to this rag. If you're not able to sleep, listen to this rag.
That would be an amazing thing. I mean.
Yeah.
Right. So I've also read that you run a non-profit organization in San Francisco. So what is it about?
It's called Indian Classical Music and Arts Foundation, or the ICM Foundation. The whole idea is to preserve, nurture and celebrate music, which means we want to make sure that we preserve by, as I said, keeping it as authentic, putting work in research, doing archival projects. Nurture, we give scholarships to students that are worthy but also not able to have the resources to pursue music. We musically adopt them. And celebrate is to just spread the joy through hosting concerts. So we do concerts at marquee events in the Bay Area. So that's what we do with ICM.
How do you see classical artists or maybe musicians in general contributing to societal well-being beyond their artistic endeavors? I mean, we just mentioned, but I'd like to know how as artists you can contribute towards.
That's actually something that needs a collaboration between the society and the artists themselves.
Right.
Because many a times when the artists go, they are sharing what is joyful to them. If there is a way to have a feedback mechanism where the society identifies how the artists are bringing value to them, then they can work and align themselves to that process. I think as a classical musician, I still fail to bring about a social revolution that an art form as influential as Hindustani music can. And I'll tell you what I mean by it. Notre Dame, that is in Paris, was about to be torn down, and there was a poet who wrote a poem about it. And it worked up a revolution to an effect that they were not able to destroy it. I would love to create bandishes that say, stop pollution, save water, be a little more mindful about earth, be kind to nature, be kind to animals, teaching compassion, teaching values of music. I would love to reflect. I have started to do that, but the repertoire is very limited at that point.
So how do you see that expanding in the future?
So expanding, just like you have remote offices and several different branches, what I've started to do is I have a school called MKSM, Mahesh Kale School of Music. And during the pandemic, I took the music school online. So we have a global presence. We are present in 25-30 countries worldwide. So what I'm essentially doing is I'm trying to create an instance of myself. So I've kind of modeled a syllabus that will make my students, teach my students not just to sing but also to look at music the way I do, and hence create an instance of spreading joy. It's just like lighting one candle with another and keep on lighting candles, so that if you place them at different parts of the house, they are going to light up the whole. So that's what I'm trying to do.
That makes a lot of sense. Do you have any advice for somebody who's trying to create music, I mean, who's into music production. So how would you want them to come up with it?
Focus on the joy of creating music, not on the output. That's a simple thing. Because I'll tell you, most of the times as musicians, we only sing for 3 hours in a concert.
Okay.
But then we live at least a few days between the concerts.
Right.
And that's where the actual joy of music happens. The preparation, if the preparation cannot excite you, the concert will not. So for everyone that is trying to create music, if the process of creation cannot give you joy, then the music is not worth it.
Right. Once again, it's again about the deeper connection that you've been mentioning.
See, I think you should always be at any point, and this is not just music, you should be married to the process of your pursuit. Because let's say you have a goal and you achieve that goal in the next 3 years, what are you going to do? It'll be a boring life.
True.
Unless your goal is to spend time with music every day creating, then it's an endless goal.
Right.
And then the other goals will just be a manifestation of your process. And that's the best way to deal with it. The pursuit should, in its design, first eliminate anything that is extrinsic.
Right.
Then the domain expertise automatically will create a vision of what you can do to correct the system around you, and that's where you actually improvise and productize whatever you're doing.
So what should be the goal as a musician?
Spend as much time with music as you can. Sing music, write music, play music, think music, read music, live.
Makes sense. Can you think of one incident from your childhood which you think has a huge impact on your thinking or your approach towards music? Shaped you towards?
There are several. To begin with, I used to be a part, my father used to take me singing bhajans every week.
Okay.
And when I was very young, it's like just an improv, You say, okay, just go at it, and you just go at it. And I used to wonder at that time, how can they improv? Until one day, I started doing it myself.
Right.
And that is where the seed of improvisation was taking its roots. And I was really little to even know what I was doing. But it's most of the times in the moments where you discover things that you don't do is what you get acceleration from. And I continue to, in spirit, put myself in a place of vulnerability, especially on stage, where I go at things that I don't. Because again, as I said, if I'm not enjoying the process of discovery of music, then I'm only selling product that I already know, and it'll be a boring place to do.
So what was that one point in life when you realized that music is something that I want to do, and I want to work in a direction of preserving Indian cultural heritage?
That point, there has been several points of conversion, but there were 2 points really. One, when I was in the Bay Area, I was sitting in the middle of a technology revolution. I still have. I did my master's in multimedia engineering at UC Santa Barbara, and then I did a master's in engineering management at Santa Clara University. So I had 2 degrees that I could use to get a lucrative, comfortable job and a career. But I realized I have something that not only gives joy to me, but also gives joy to people that are around me. And one such thing was in Philadelphia when I was singing in a concert, and there was an older lady, my grandma's age at the time. She came and she started to touch myself, and I was very awkward, and I lifted her up. And she said, both of my kids have moved to the US now, and I used to go to Pandharpur, which used to be a yearly procession, to meet my God. And now, because I'm geographically isolated, I cannot. And in your song, I was able to meet my God. And I was like, I love doing what I do. People love listening to what I do.
Right.
And I get paid for it.
What else could
It's like a golden standard. Why not?
So how would you want somebody to identify what they actually want to do? These are
See, everyone knows. I mean, if you
somewhere, but then-
close your eyes
yeah.
and just go to your happy place, you need to create a process out of that happy place that you can incorporate in your daily life. It's a simple thing. Most of the times, all this conventional truth, do not lie, be nice to others. It's not something that we don't know.
Right.
Most of the times, it's that we go away from what we already know instinctively. So I would just say, be in touch with the God within.
So classical music has been in India for a very long time. How do you think you are contributing to maybe changing that a bit, or maybe improvising or adding something in that direction?
Well, I'm just a candle that is burning, like I said, and I want to travel to the places that are still dark to lighten them up. And that non-figuratively means trying to understand the environment, because I represent the youth. In classical music, you're not old until you hit 80.
Right.
I know I can communicate, I can bond with the youth very well, which also means that I'm able to understand where the youth is going as far as their thought process is going.
Right.
And then how to incorporate and align with the youth. See, I think today's youth is, and it's always been, way smarter than the youth before. It's always going to be that. So you guys are not frivolous at all. You know where value is. You know where tradition is. You know you cannot buy heritage. It doesn't matter how you hit the biggest jackpot. Elon Musk cannot buy a heritage. He can buy a castle, but he cannot buy the heritage. And then that is the only thing I need to communicate. Now, if I can make that nutritious, potent thing tasty enough, then that's where I am trying to get at, to make Indian classical music appear cool enough for the kids to hang out around, but authentic enough to give them a piece of philosophy, so it can be their guiding light.
So do you also see music as a means of introspecting and
Absolutely. Well, yeah. See, all these arts, as I said, every art is a reaction of your own self. It's a reaction to the stimulus. Art cannot be formed in an absolute. Art comes from a dialogue within, and then it is presented as a dialogue outside. So you cannot create art without being introspective. And that's why I keep on impounding on the fact that you need to spend more time with the process. I'll just give you an example. You use your voice to communicate every single day.
Right.
Have you spoken to your voice? You haven't. That's what art does.
Right. It makes you speak to yourself.
Yes.
Well, I guess that brings us pretty much to the end of this podcast. So towards the end, I'd like you to give one message to the audience.
Well, I consider myself fortunate to have found that passion that keeps me awake on the days that I'm most tired, because I want to keep on going. Find your passion. On the musical side, the preservation of our culture cannot be offloaded to anyone else. It cannot be developed offshore. So we are supposed to take care of our culture. I'm doing my bit. I want all of you to do your bit also.
Thank you so much once again for being on board. That brings us to the end of this podcast. I'm Arya. See you soon. Thank you.